You can hear me. Clap twice. Welcome back. Have the honor of chairing our second panel this morning. And perhaps I could begin by re-inviting us to mute our various devices in case you happen to turn it on during the break to check your messages. And I have the great privilege and honor of introducing our two presenters for this morning's second panel. The next panel is entitled Historical, Religious, and Symbolic Significance of the House of the Bab in Shiraz. And how appropriate, friends, that we have two scions of the illustrious Afghan family to lead us in this presentation and discussion. I learned just yesterday that the word scion, S-C-I-O-N in English, has two meanings, which I think is so beautiful and appropriate. One meaning is the meaning that we all know, the idea of being a descendant or progeny of a family. But did you know, as I learned last time, that scion also means a shoot or twig of a living tree? Wow. That's exactly what the word Afghan is. The meaning of the word Afghan, a twig, a shoot of a living tree, in this case, the tree of the family of the Bab. Elham Afghan Mahdavy was born into the Afghan family of Shiraz. Her uncle and father were the most recent custodians of the House of the Bab, and they served on the local spiritual assembly of Shiraz before the revolution. Elham therefore had the distinct privilege of visiting the House of the Bab on many occasions during her childhood and learning firsthand from her beloved father and uncle the traditions associated with visiting the House of the Bab. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over her extensive educational, professional experience and expertise, all of which you can read about on the program online, and limit myself to just say that Elham has been deeply involved in community service during her decades in the United States, including serving as a children's class teacher and as a member of a local spiritual assembly in Massachusetts. Her husband and co-presenter, Hamid Afghan Mahdavy, was also born into the Afghan family, but the other branch of the Afghan family in Yazd, and like his wife has lived both in Iran and the United States. He has over 4 decades of experience in the nuclear industry and continues to maintain an active commitment to learning and community service, including serving on the board of the Hart Brothers Foundation. And with that, I'm not going to take any more of the time that we have available and invite you to join me, please, in welcoming our presenters.
Thank you. So Hamid and I would like to welcome you and thank the Korean True Institution for this opportunity and honor. It's our first presentation, so bear with us. The other thing is the topic, which John said it is the historical, religious, and symbolic significance of the House of the Bab. We have done translation of the sacred text, so they're all provisional translations, but we have incorporated in our presentation. The references are on the screen for anyone who may be interested. We also had the benefit of first-hand information from my cousin, Firuze Dehqan Abrar, and all the research and material that she had used for many of her presentations in Farsi in various events in Europe.
Aloha, friends. There's such a wealth of information combined with our personal histories and emotions that we decided to create videos to better incorporate visual material and manage our time allotment to ensure delivery of the key materials. I will start by presenting the spiritual and symbolic significance of the house of the Bab and why it is so dear and important to not only Persian friends, but to Baha'is all over the world. Elham will review the Afghan family genealogy and the principal figures who either lived in the house of the Bab or played a key role in preserving and protecting. Then I will cover the history of the ups and downs of the physical house, starting from the birth of His Holiness the Bab and ending in present-day Iran. In the interest of time, we appreciate all questions you kept at the very end. Thank you very much. Okay. So spiritual and symbolic significance of the house of the Bab. So, on the spiritual, first and foremost, Bahá'í was directed in the Kitab Atlas. Then we'll review some tablets from Abdul Baha. And the third is the point that the house in Shiraz was where the Bab first declared his mission to Mullah Hussein, and this whole story of the Bahá'í and Bahá'í faith began. The Kitab Atlas. And even quotes, the Lord hath ordained for those of you who are able shall make pilgrimage to the sacred house. And then there's a clarification note, most holy shrine of the blessed house of Mahdavy and the venerated house of the Bab in Shiraz are consecrated, obligatory, if one can afford it and is able to do so. So these are an excerpt from many tablets exist from Abdul Baha's communications with people in Iran and in Shiraz, but these are some of the excerpts of some of the tablets that we take. This is to Nuruddin in when he lived in Port Said. His Excellency Afghan of the Blessed through region of Allah, the glory of God, and glory be upon him. He is God. In regard to the honored house of the blessed threshold, my soul be a sacrifice to that threshold. Thou hast written that frequently the entrance of that blessed city have multitude of pleas and requests. Therefore, you must address this matter in a manner that the soul of Abdul Baha will become vibrant and joyous. I swear upon the blessed soul of this holy and pure excellence, the Son of reality, master of the house, may my soul, essence, and identity be a sacrifice to his soul, that the most desire of my heart and soul is be blessed with visiting that pure soil, and with my eyelashes, sweep that threshold. Thou had written regarding the illustrious house, what a pilgrimage of the world. May my soul be a sacrifice to that soul. This is the most important of matters. As you have written, pilgrimage of the people has been forbidden and impossible. This situation has become the source of sorrow for the two friends and those eager to go to pilgrimage at that most great house. Of course, by any means, facilitated condition, where time by time, a few can enter and at least do a simple visitation. If not, little by little, lack of visitation become a habit, and the future will be forgotten. It must be the absolute duty of the friend in Shiraz to at least once a month visit the house. If this servant was in forest, I would go to pilgrimage once a week, even should the enemies cast stones upon me. Since thou art the protector and overseer of the house, thou must make the most effort in this matter. Glory be upon you. This is the tablet to the Afghan family as a whole. He is God, O Afghans of the tree of eternity, and O friends of the blessed beauty. The holy house and point of pilgrimage of the concourse on high, under all conditions, this must be offered the utmost of protection and care. Thrive in its respect and service. This servant is one of the servants of that threshold. Notice in the kingdom of Allah how much importance is given to this point of pilgrimage of the believers. Therefore, the residents of Forest were in the shadow of that blessed place. And here's a tablet that Abdu'l-Baha revealed in honor of the LSA of Shiraz. Shiraz, members of the spiritual assembly, glory of God, the glorious be upon you. O servants of the blessed beauty, thou letter was received and the contents understood. Also, thou letter to his excellency, Afnan of the blessed three, the glory of God, the glorious be upon him, and the response of his excellency to you. All were read with the utmost of attention and detail. Due to the limitation of time, I am compelled to be brief. Due to the hidden confirmations of the blessed beauty, may my soul be a sacrifice for its friends. Thank God, the honored house has been restored from its condition of disrepair, with focus on the original foundation and previous design. It hath been rebuilt and restored, and to the extent possible, details have been added. With the confirmations of the greatest name, little by little, the extensions of that great house, such as hospitals, school for orphans, home for the infirm, and such all will be furnished and completed, finished and completed. The house that belongs to Afnan of the Blessed Three, Janab Haji Mahdi, upon him be the glory of God. He should repair it himself and not have a partner or staple in such repair. Therefore, write to him so that he deems appropriate this is accomplished. He must not delay at all. In such matters, complacency must not be tolerated. Due to abundance of grace of the blessed beauty, may my soul be a sacrifice for his friends. I am hopeful that the blessed house in the future will shine with the utmost of grandeur and robe in everlasting honor. Observe the abundance of favors, the utmost hope of the light of the morning of blessing, the primal point, the most excellent, my soul be a sacrifice to it, was that the beloved manifestation of beauty of God, he whom God shall make manifest, the day of his manifestation, make mention of that blessed tree. Now in the shadow of the blessing, now in the shadow of his blessing, even the soil that is associated with the most excellent, meaning the primal point, may my soul be a sacrifice to it, has gained prominence, and day by day will become more resolute. The extensions of the great house must be erected. Upon you be glory of the glorious. Symbolic. So, for those of you who live in Shiva, for the Persian friend, and specifically those in Shiva, the house of the law was their love. The most remote space, and it was accessible to all the friends. With a little bit of scheduling and discretion, every Bahá'í had the privilege of being able to visit. You cannot read Daniel's narrative and not be awed at what stories of all of this house were told to them. For the friends, it was a symbol of their perseverance as a faith and as a community. And as one of the living Argentinian architects said after visiting the house, it is only by God's inspiration that one can build such a perfect and functional house on such a small scale.
So in the interest of time, we're going to go very quickly, so our apologies for being so fast. We're going to cover the Afnan family genealogy and the life of the principal figures. who played a key role in either taking care of the house, protecting, or using the house. So this is the genealogy of the Afnan. We will begin with a brief review of the Bab's family genealogy. As shown, both the mother and the wife of the Bab are descendants from the two sons of Mirza Abed. It is important to highlight that marriages within the extended family were common in Shia Islam and were often viewed as specially blessed. This tradition is associated with the marriage of Imam Ali, the first Shia Imam, and Fatimah, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, who were also cousins. Due to time constraints, we cannot examine the genealogy in detail. However, as we become acquainted with the principal figures who lived in the house of the Bab or played a key role in its preservation and protection, the relationship within the Afnan family will become clearer. All branches of the Afnan family trace their lineage to the Bab through his maternal line and his wife's family. With the exception of the descendants of Agha Mirza Aghay Nuruddin, who are also connected to the Bab through his paternal lineage. Rather than listing the individuals to be discussed today, I will introduce each one as their story unfolds. A brief video will accompany each introduction to help us become acquainted with them. As we learn about the Bab's mother and wife, I invite you to consider the position of women in the mid-19th century, where a woman's identity was defined primarily by her role as a wife or mother. With this in mind, I encourage you to listen with both imagination and empathy as we reflect on their lives, the loss of their husbands and only sons, and the hardship and suffering they endured.
So we're going to start with Mahdavy,
The mother of the Bab, and as I go through the videos, you're going to see the red border on the character, so you can see where they are in the jumla. Fatima Begum was the daughter of Mir Sayyid Muhammad Hussain from the lineage of Imam Hussain, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. He had three brothers, Haji Mirza Muhammad, the older brother, Khale Akbar, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, the middle uncle, Khale Azam, and Haji Mirza Hassan Ali, the youngest uncle, Khale Asghar. Fatima Begum married Sayyid Muhammad Reza, and her prayer for a child were answered on October 20th, 1819, when she gave birth to Sayyid Ali Muhammad. The couple rejoiced in their son, but their happiness was soon overshadowed by the death of Sayyid Muhammad Reza. Before his passing, he had appointed Fatima Begum's middle brother, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, as the guardian of his wife and his child. Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali then assumed responsibility for raising the Bab and caring for Fatima Begum. When the Bab reached maturity, approximately 15, he joined his older uncle in business in Bushehr, where he worked for about 5 to 6 years. In the spring of 1841, he left Bushehr to travel to the holy cities of Najaf and Karbala. He then returned to Shiraz and married Khadija Begum, daughter of parental uncle of Fatima Begum, in August of 1842. In 1843, Khadija Begum gave birth to a son, Ahmad, bringing great joy to Fatima Begum. But the child soon passed away, leaving her devastated. About a year later, on the evening of May 23, 1844, the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussain, and in September 1844, he left Shiraz on pilgrimage to Mecca. Fatima Begum deeply loved her son and worried constantly about his well-being. The Bab likewise showed great love and respect for his mother. This is evident from a letter he wrote to her in July of 1845. He is God the Most High. In the name of God, the most merciful of merciful. This is a letter written from the port of Mocha to the Honorable Mother. May God the most exalted keep her safe. She is most certainly eager to know about the well-being of her son. Upon the return of the Bab from pilgrimage back to Shiraz, events of unprecedented nature unfolded rapidly. In the interest of time, we will not cover the historical events in Shiraz and fast forward to Imam Jum'ah of Shiraz refusing to sign the edict from the ulama to kill the Bab and the Bab being released to the care of his uncle, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali. Nabil states, Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, his heart filled with gratitude to God, conducted the Bab to his home and committed him to the care of his revered mother. In the quiet of his own home, the Bab led for a time a life in undisturbed retirement. No one except his wife, his mother, and his uncle had any interaction with him. This God-given opportunity enabled his mother and his wife to spend precious time with him. Together, they celebrated Nowruz of 1846. Knowing that the reunion with his immediate family will be the last one in this transient world, the Bab transferred all his earthly possessions to his mother and his wife. The next big event was the Bab's departure from Shiraz. Before leaving, he entrusted his mother and his wife to the care of Khala Azam. One can imagine the emotional hardship and suffering of a mother to be separated from her only son. After the Bab's departure from Shiraz to Isfahan, it was a time of anguish and uncertainty as she was not getting any news regarding the Bab. Eventually, she learned that the Bab had been exiled to the mountains of Azerbaijan, causing great distress to Fatima Begum. She appealed to her brother Khala Azam, who decided to go and visit the Bab. After visiting the Bab at Shehri Fortress in 1849, he proceeded to Tehran and later was martyred there in February of 1850. Soon afterward, the Bab himself was martyred in Tabriz on July 9, 1850. These tragedies were initially concealed from Fatima Begum and Khadija Begum. While they awaited news, another loss occurred. The death of Haji Mirza Jawad, the son of Khala Azam, who died of illness at the age of 18 while returning to Shiraz from pilgrimage. When the news arrived, the deaths of all three family members had to be revealed at once. Overwhelmed by grief, Fatima Begum could no longer bear to live in Shiraz. She decided to move to the holy cities in Iraq and dedicate the rest of her life to prayer and meditation. The exact date of Fatima Begum's arrival in Iraq and details of her life there are not clear. What is documented is the message she received from Baha'u'llah after he returned to Baghdad from the mountains of Soleimaniye. Nabil notes, Baha'u'llah instructed two of his devoted followers, whom already were intimately acquainted with her, to instruct her in the principles of the faith. She acknowledged the truth of the cause and remained faithful until she departed this life, fully aware of the bountiful gifts which the Almighty had chosen to confer upon her.
Fatima Begum's greatest and most lasting glory is that she bore and raised the martyred herald of Baha'u'llah's revelation, and that she recognized the station of her son and the one whom Advent he heralded. Baha'u'llah bestowed on her the title of most virtuous of all women.
Next, we're going to go to the life of Khadija Begum, the wife of the
Khadija Begum was born in 1822. Her family lived next door to Haji Mirza Ali, the brother of Fatima Begum, and the children of the two families grew up playing together. When she was 12, Sayyid Ali Muhammad, having reached maturity, joined his uncle Haji Mirza Muhammad in business and moved to Bushehr. When the Bab was in Bushehr, Khadija Begum had a vivid dream in which she saw her young cousin in a verdant plain with flowers in profusion, facing towards the Qibla, Mecca, in an attitude of prayers. He wore an outer coat on which Quranic verses were embroidered with threads of gold, his face radiant. The dream and other dreams of Khadija Begum suggest the strong spiritual bond between her and the Bab. We covered Khadija Begum's marriage to the Bab, along with the birth and the death of their son Ahmad. One cannot imagine the depth of sorrow surging in Khadija Begum's heart. The Bab in Ayyubul Asma speaks very tenderly of his marriage and bids Khadija Begum to be patient in what God had decreed and assures her of the glory ordained for Ahmad in the words of God. Khadija Begum's recognition of the station of the Bab. Around midnight, his wife noticed of his absence. She became worried, as she was not yet aware of his inner heart's secret. Her anxiety heightened with the passing of every second. She involuntarily climbed the stairs of the upper chamber. She proceeded towards the guest room. In the middle of the room, she saw the Bab with his hands raised heavenward, while her eyes were fixed upon the dazzling light emanating from his being. A feeling of awe and fright came over her. She wanted to return, but was unable to move. At this point, his blessed person relieved her of her bewilderment by uttering the words, "Go back." She gained her faculties and went back to bed, but could not sleep. In the morning, according to the usual practice, she went to the room of the mother of the Bab for breakfast. She was still trembling and did not lift her head. The Bab inquired, "What is the matter with you?" She replied, "What was the condition I saw you in?" The Bab uttered such words that caused her anxiety to vanish and confirmed her in what she had seen. "Know thou that the Almighty God is manifested in me. I am the one whose advent the people of Islam had expected for 1,000 years. God had created me for a great cause, and you witnessed the divine revelation. Although I had not wished that you see me in that state, yet God had so willed that there may not be any place of hesitation or doubt in your heart." 50 days later, on May 23, 1844, the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussein. That night, he had asked Khadija Begum to go to sleep. She later recalled, "I did not wish to disobey him, but I remained awake all night and heard his blessed voice until morning, conversing with Baba, chanting verses and presenting proofs and arguments." Khadija Begum was notable for her ability to understand the truth others could not bear to hear, which is why the Bab shared with her information about future events. To her, the Bab confided the secrets of his future sufferings and unfolded to her eyes the significance of the events that were to transpire in his days. He bade her not to divulge this secret to his mother and counseled her to be patient and resigned to the will of God. He entrusted her with a special prayer revealed and written by him, reading to which he assured her would remove her difficulties and lighten her burden of her woes. There are numerous letters from the Bab to Khadija Begum which attest to his love for her and her special place in the history. In a letter, the Bab, in his own handwriting when he was going on pilgrimage, refers to Khadija Begum as Jane Shireen Man, O thou sweet life of mine. In another letter, the Bab states, O well-beloved, thou shalt not be a woman like other women, if thou obeyest God in the cause of truth. Earlier, we highlighted events from the Bab's pilgrimage to Mecca and his return to Shiraz, which led to orders for him to leave the city and never return. Khadija Begum recounts an episode that sealed their separation on this earthly plane. It was summertime and we slept on the roof. Farrashes of the governor made their way up to our home from the neighbor's roof. The blessed being rose up and told me to go downstairs. The intruders told him, you have to come with us to the house of Abdul Hamid Khan, the chief of police. The arrest of the Bab that night set off a chain of events. Cholera had struck the city, claiming many lives, and the governor had fled Shiraz for safety. When the son of Abdul Hamid Khan fell gravely ill with cholera, his father, on the insistence of his wife, begged the Bab to intercede. After the Bab prayed and the boy recovered, Abdul Hamid Khan, grateful, urged the governor, who had secretly conspired with the Prime Minister Haji Mirza Abbasi to execute the Bab, to release him. The governor agreed on the condition that the Bab leave Shiraz. The Bab was released and before departing visited his uncle Haji Mirza Ali to bid him farewell, entrusting him with the care of his mother and his wife. He also visited Haji Mirza Zain al-Abidin and his wife Zahra Begum to say goodbye. The Bab left Shiraz and Khadija Begum states, I cannot describe the terrible trials, ordeals and difficulties that occurred after this. I did not see even one of his friends or followers. The doors were shut on all sides and communication were cut off completely. As we discussed, Fatima Begum and Khadija Begum did not receive any news about the Bab's whereabouts or condition for a long time. Eventually, the news of the martyrdom of Khala Azam and the Bab, as well as the passing of Haji Mirza Jawad, were revealed to them all at once. And these events led Fatima Begum to leave Shiraz. Khadija Begum had endured her grief and trials in solitude and silence, speaking to no one for a long time about the anguish within her heart. And now she was also separated from the Bab's mother, whom she loved deeply and whose support she had relied upon. However, after Fatima Begum left Shiraz, Khadija Begum could begin sharing the Bab's mission with his family. She first confided in her young nephew, Agha Mirza Agha, whose pure and receptive heart made him the first family member to believe in the Bab. Agha Mirza Agha then taught the faith to his parents, who understood the depth of Khadija Begum's trials. Nabi Azam traveled to Shiraz around 1866, carrying the Blessed Beauty's mandate to proclaim his mission. At Agha Mirza Agha's house, he informed the Babis that Baha'u'llah was the promised one of Bayan. Khadija Begum states, I was behind the curtain, and as soon as I heard him saying that the blessed beauty was he whom God shall manifest, promised in Bayan, I experienced the same feeling I had that night, standing at the threshold of the upper chamber of our home. Immediately, I put my forehead on the ground in adoration and thanksgiving. I did not hesitate for a moment, and my submission was instantaneous and total. Khadija Begum survived the war by 32 years. During those long years of separation and anguish, she endured tribulations far beyond what ordinary human being can sustain. She passed away on September 15, 1882 in Shiraz. The tablet of visitation for Khadija Begum revealed by Baha'u'llah in her honor attests to his depth of sorrow and grief and testifies to her exalted station. Before the creation of the world of being, she had found the fragrance of the garment of the merciful.
I wish we had time to reflect, but unfortunately we don't, so we will continue with the life of Zahra Begum. We're not done. The sister of the wife of the
Zahra Begum was born to Haji Bibi and Agha Mirza of Shiraz. She had a stepsister and a stepbrother from a different father. Her full sister and brothers were Khadija Begum, the wife of the Bab, Haji Mirza Sayyid Hassan, entitled Afnan Kabir, and Haji Mirza Sayyid Abul Qasim. In 1838, Zahra Begum married Agha Mirza Zain al-Abidin, the son of the uncle of the Bab's father. Together, they had one surviving son, known as Agha Mirza Agha, who was deeply cherished by both his mother and his aunt Khadija Begum. He was the person who taught his parents about the station of the Bab when he was about 13 years old. Zahra Begum was known for her unwavering support and deep love for Khadija Begum. She had a courageous character. She was one of the few who dared to visit her during the difficult days after the Bab's arrest in 1846. During this time, she was known to dress as a beggar, to not draw attention, and visit her sister's house to lend her support. Recognizing her extraordinary service she rendered to her sister, Baha'u'llah in a tablet revealed appointed Zahra Begum as the custodian of the blessed house of the Bab after her sister's passing. This custodianship was decreed to remain within her lineage, ensuring her legacy would endure through the ages. Provisional translation of the tablet of custodianship of the house of the Bab. In my name, the ordainer, the all-wise, before the faces of all who are in heaven and on earth, O my beloved ones, in the land of Shin, Shiraz. The Supreme Pen hath testified, and doth testify at all times, that He is the One, the Incomparable, the Almighty, the All-Compelling, the Most Powerful. He doeth what He willeth, and ordaineth what He pleaseth, and He is the All-Gracious, the Most Bountiful. We have bestowed the custodianship of the blessed house unto the greatest lead, the wife of the primal point, and unto the sisters of the lead. Upon them be the glory of God, His mercy, and loving kindness. The custodianship hath been bestowed by God upon that house. Thus have we adorned it with the ornament of grace, and sealed the decree with my seal, the mighty, the best beloved. This honor and bounty have been exclusively bestowed upon the sister and her offspring by God, the bestower, the all-bounteous, the Lord of grace abounding, the ever-forgiving, the most merciful. In the past, such exalted positions were reserved for men of high rank and stature. Even today, it is extraordinary for such an honor to be bestowed upon a woman. How much more revolutionary it must have been in the mid-19th century when women throughout the world, and especially in the Middle East, were deprived of far less significant rights and distinctions. Entrusting Zahra Begum with this sacred responsibility demonstrates the revolutionary principle of gender equality in the revelation of Baha'u'llah, affirming her role as the custodian of one of the most revered and holy sites. Zahra Begum was addressed by Baha'u'llah as Dukht Haram, sister of the honorable wife. She was the recipient of many tablets by Baha'u'llah. She outlived her beloved sister by 8 years. The sisters had shared a profound close bond, and life after Khadija Begum's passing must have been very challenging. She passed away in Shiraz in 1890. Next is Agha Mirza Aghay Nuruddin. Agha Mirza Agha was born in 1842. His mother was Zahra Begum, the sister-in-law of the Bab, and his father was Agha Mirza Zain al-Abidin, a parental cousin of the Bab. Although his given name was Sayyid Muhammad, he was called Agha Mirza Agha out of respect for the Prophet Muhammad. He was the only child of his parents to survive to adulthood, and thus the sole member of the Afnan family who was related to both the father and the mother of the Bab. On the day that the Bab visited Agha Mirza Zain al-Abidin and Zahra Begum to bid them farewell before leaving Shiraz, Agha Mirza Agha was ill. The Bab paused at the child's bedside and recited a prayer for him before departing. He later told Khadija Begum that when Agha Mirza Agha reached maturity, he would become her aid and support. Khadija Begum had a special affection for her nephew and took a keen interest in his upbringing and education. As previously noted, the first person in whom she confided the truth of the Bab's mission was Agha Mirza Agha. At the age of 13, he embraced the cause of the Bab, a step that further deepened the bond of affection between him and his aunt, a relationship that endured until the end of Khadija Begum's life. Agha Mirza Agha subsequently shared the new faith with his parents and began teaching other members of the extended family. He also maintained a close contact with other followers of the Bab, thereby becoming actively involved in the Babi community. Khadija Begum asked him to also talk to the oldest uncle regarding the Bab station. The maternal uncle of the Bab, Khan Akbar, had initially accepted the claims of the Bab when he returned from pilgrimage. However, following the martyrdom of the Bab in 1950, his conviction was shaken. Khan Akbar was a devout Muslim and was well versed in the Islamic Hadith, which after the Quran constitutes one of the principal sources of religious authority and interpretation within Islam. Following the Bab's martyrdom, Khan Akbar began to question the legitimacy of the Bab's claim to be the promised poem. His doubts arose primarily from certain tradition interpretation of Hadith literature that described the appearance of the poem as an event accompanied by divine protection and the ultimate establishment of his sovereignty on earth. Agha Mirza Agha was instrumental to convince Khala Akbar to visit Baha'u'llah in Baghdad and directly give him his questions centered on the reconciliation of Islamic prophecies within the claims of the Bab. In particular, he sought clarification regarding the meaning of the day of resurrection, the return of the 12 Imam, and the interpretation of scripture's prophecies. In response to these inquiries, Baha'u'llah revealed the Kitab-e-Iqan, the Book of Certitude, around January 1861. In this work, Baha'u'llah articulated a series of theological principles that would later become foundational to the Bahá'í faith. The Kitab-e-Iqan given to Khala Akbar was transcribed in the handwriting of Abdul Baha, and upon reading it, Khala Akbar regained his faith and certitude in the Bab, and later to Baha'u'llah, and he remained steadfast in his belief until the end of his life. As we discussed earlier, soon after his declaration, Baha'u'llah sent Nabi Azam to Iran to announce the momentous news to the Babis. Nabi went to the home of Agha Mirza Agha and announced the joyful tidings to the believers in Shiraz. Agha Mirza Agha immediately accepted Baha'u'llah and considered himself a humble servant at his threshold. Upon Agha Mirza Agha becoming a Bahá'í, Baha'u'llah bestowed on him the title of Nuruddin, meaning the light of faith. Nuruddin married Maryam Sultan Begum, and they had 5 sons and a daughter. In his career, Nuruddin was a merchant trading in partnership with other members of the Elham family, and he was also in business with the Bahá'í brothers known as the King of the Martyrs and the Beloved of Martyrs. When his brothers were martyred in 1879, members of the Bahá'í community advised Nuruddin to depart Iran for his safety. He moved to India shortly after and established a trading business in Bombay. A few years later, in 1887, he traveled to Egypt and Beirut. While in Beirut, he and his eldest son, Agha Sayyed, received permission to visit Baha'u'llah. They both attained his presence for the first time on the anniversary of the Bab's declaration, which that year coincided with 20 January 1888, since it was celebrated on the lunar calendar, and Baha'u'llah bestowed unbound blessings upon them. In July 1891, Baha'u'llah invited Nuruddin and his family on pilgrimage. He and his family stayed in the Holy Land for 9 months, during which Baha'u'llah revealed the tablet of the word in his honor. In 1901, Abdul commissioned Nuruddin to return to Shiraz from Egypt, to take on a great duty and responsibility, which the master prayed he would be able to fulfill. The mission of great import turned out to be restoration of the house of the Bab. Hamid will cover the undertaking of the restoration of the building in detail. Nuruddin was a devoted and steadfast believer who was blessed to receive many tablets from Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. He was the trusted confidant of Abdul Baha during the difficult period where the master faced many challenges posed by the covenant breakers. Following the passing of his mother Zahra Begum, Nureddin assumed the responsibility of serving as the custodian of the House of the Bab until his passing in November 1903 in Shiraz.
So now we're going to go to Mirza Habibullah Afnan.
Mirza Habibullah Afnan was born in 1875 in the House of the Bab and raised by none other than Khadija Begum. As we learned, Khadija Begum had a particular affinity for his father, Agha Mirza Agha Nureddin. The Bab had told her that when Agha Mirza Agha reaches maturity, he would protect and support her, and Nureddin did just that when her relations had most fiercely beset Khadija Begum. Khadija Begum's love and affection also extended to Nureddin's children, and Mirza Habib had the bounty and blessing of her love and her attention towards his spiritual and academic education. Mirza Habibullah attended the same school that the Bab had attended and was tutored by the brightest and most learned educators in Shiraz. As we learned earlier, in 1891, Baha'u'llah invited Nureddin and his family on pilgrimage. Mirza Habibullah spent 9 months as a youth in the Holy Land near Baha'u'llah. During this time, Baha'u'llah arranged for him to study with the Ahsans in the mansion of Bahá'í. Around the turn of the century, Mirza Habibullah and his family were called to the homework service of his life. For nearly 50 years, he served with distinction as the hereditary custodian of the House of the Bab in Shiraz. This role uniquely positioned him to recount the history of the Bahá'í and Bahá'í movements in Shiraz, as well as the ministries of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha in the Holy Land, to many of the believers who visited the House of the Bab during this time. Mirza Habibullah married Bibi Agha Begum, who was the third generation related to both Khale Akbar and Khale Asghar. They had 3 sons and 3 daughters. Mirza Habib was a well-educated scholar and articulate man. He authored 2 historical narratives. The first was Tarikh Amr Fars wa Shiraz, History of the Cause in Fars and Shiraz, which was likely written in the early to mid-1930s. At the request of the Guardian that local histories of the Bahá'í and Bahá'í faith be recorded, Mirza Habib was assigned to document the historical events of Shiraz and province of Fars, resulting in this work. The second was his journals, which recounts his pilgrimage to the Holy Land and his stay in Egypt. Although the exact date of this composition is unknown, his sons Abu Qasim and Hassan Afnan indicated that he began writing them soon after returning to Iran, and he organized these histories in the mid-1940s. A key section describes his time near Baha'u'llah from mid-July 1891 until shortly after Nowruz of 1892, just over 2 months before Baha'u'llah's ascension. For the next decade, while living in Egypt, he was in constant communication with Abdu'l-Baha and visited him periodically in Akka. During these visits, he witnessed some of the most painful moments of Abdu'l-Baha's ministry, including the defection and misconduct of certain Ahsans, the master's anguish, his efforts to conceal their violations, and the eventual communication of these events to the Bahá'í community. These narratives were later published in Farsi as Khatarat Mirza Habibullah Afnan. Mirza Habibullah passed away in Shiraz in 1951 after faithfully serving as the custodian of the House of the Bab for nearly 50 years.
So the last figures we're going to cover are Abu Qasim and Hassan Afnan and what Baha'u'llah had destined for them.
Abu Qasim and Hassan Afnan, the two eldest sons of Mirza Habibullah and Bibi Agha Begum Afnan, were born in Shiraz in 1919 and 1921 respectively. Their grandmother, Maryam Sultan Begum, named them after her father and her uncle, brothers of the wife of the Bab. They were very young when Abdul Baha sent a prayer to Agha Mirza Habibullah for his sons Abu Qasim and Hassan. They grew up in a loving family environment and received special education from their father, uncle, and learned teachers and orators of the cause. They studied the sacred Persian and Arabic texts and participated in various Bahá'í activities and institutions. Both served on the local spiritual assembly of Shiraz for many years. In addition, Abu Qasim was appointed as an auxiliary board member in 1972. After graduating from high school, Hassan left Shiraz to study agriculture and later joined the Department of Agriculture in Gurgan. He welcomed the assignment as Gurgan was a pioneering goal of the National Spiritual Assembly of Iran. After several years of service, he requested a transfer to Shiraz due to his father's declining heart condition. Sadly, his transfer to Shiraz coincided with his father's passing to the Afghan kingdom. Upon the passing of Mirza Habibullah, his will and testament appointed Abu Qasim with the support and assistance of his brother Hassan as the custodians of the House of the Bab. Translation of a portion of the will read: You who are as one soul in two bodies must join hands and with determination serve the holy threshold of that point of circumambulation of the leaders of the world with the utmost of humility and detachment. Shortly after their father's passing, one sister Firdaus, who had a heart condition, and the eldest brother Abu Qasim, with the encouragement of the hand of the cause Tarazullah Samandari and permission from the guardian, joined a group of believers from Shiraz on pilgrimage to the Holy Land. There, the guardian showed them great kindness, inquired about the house of the Bab and the pilgrims, and provided certain directions and guidance. He recommended that Firdaus be taken to England for medical treatment. He also indicated that their brother Hassan should remain in Shiraz to serve the House of the Bab on his behalf. The two brothers constantly assisted and consulted one another in matters of the cause, especially in caring for the House of the Bab. They ensured that one of them was always in Shiraz to receive visitors and to follow the guardian's guidance, faithfully dedicating their lives to preserving and protecting the sacred house. In addition to their service in Shiraz and care of the House of the Bab, the two brothers rendered two notable historical service. First, during the 1950s and 1960s, they reviewed, organized, and classified numerous tablets and historical material related to the Bab and other Bahá'í subjects. A large collection of family correspondence from the time of the Bab to the passing of Khala Akbar was stored in his home, filling nearly an entire room. As among the few able to read the Afghan family commercial notation and understand its historical context, their work proved invaluable. It supported research at the Bahá'í World Center, assisted the hand of the cause Mr. Hassan Banyuzi, and contributed to Abul Qasim's publication of Ahde A'la. Second, they preserved their father's journals, being among the few who could read Mirza Habibullah's handwriting. They carefully organized the material, and Hassan rewrote the text so it would be legible. These were later compiled by my cousin Maryam Afnan Rabbani and published as Khatarat Mirza Habibullah Afnan in Farsi. Firdaus underwent her first heart surgery in England in her 20s. About 25 years later, needing a second operation, she followed the Guardian's earlier recommendation to return to England, accompanied by her two brothers. They traveled in the summer of 1979, and she had the surgery there. While they were abroad, the Revolutionary Guard began searching for the brothers. Seeking guidance from the Universal House of Justice, they were advised not to return to Iran. Abul Qasim remained in England, where his daughters were studying in Oxford. He continued his research and writing on the history of the cause, and often spoke at conferences in Europe. He passed away in England in October 2004. Following his passing, the Universal House of Justice praised his valued contribution in the field of the Bahá'í scholarship through the articles and treatises he authored on the early history of the faith. Hassan and his wife moved to San Diego to be near their daughters. There he offered Bahá'í education classes and served on several committees. Hassan passed away in San Diego on May 28, 2004. Following his passing, the Universal House of Justice and National Spiritual Assembly of the United States and San Diego LSA sent letters expressing appreciation for his years of service.
So this concludes just learning about the figures. We have another segment, and our apologies for giving you so much information. So I'm going to pass it to Hamid.
Doug earlier said it's really bad to be between people and their break. Well, guess what? I'm between people and their lunch, so my apologies. So I'm breaking down the history of the House of the Bab into three segments. One is from around 1816 to 1850, a little bit after the martyrdom of the Bab. The second one is from 1851 to 1900. And these days have we'll see, will have historical significance. The last one is from 1901 to present day. Here we go. Without further ado.
Elham under the Rizal, the father of the Bab, and his mother and father lived there after the marriage. On October 20th, 1819, the Bab was born in the house of the uncle of his mother, and lived in the house until the passing of his father, when he was a young child. After the passing of his father, Bahá'í moved with his mother to the house of Abd Sayyid Ali, the great uncle, who had been assigned by his father to be his guardian. During this period, the house was under family control. Shortly after the Bab returned from Abbas, he moved back into the house, and on August 25th, 1842, he and Khadija Begum are married, and they, with his mother, grandmother, Mubarak and Fezza, resided in the house until his final departure for Isfahan. The rest of the family remained in the house until Fatima Begum traveled to Karbala and Khadija Begum moved to the house of the great uncle where her stepsister lived. This period was painful for her. Also, the house was occupied by various non-believers. During the same time, the nephew of Khadija Begum, Mirza, was reaching adolescence and became concerned with the condition of the house. Elham talked about Khadija Begum's close relationship and affinity for her nephew. Mirza reaches out to the eldest uncle of the Bab, voicing his concern regarding the decline of the house, and tells the uncle that he is the closest blood relative to his holiness the Bab, and the house is practically his, and he should take action. The uncle states that he is not able to do anything, but Mirza was free to proceed and act as he deemed appropriate. Mirza approaches the occupant of the house and states that you have occupied this house without the express consent and permission of the owner, and hence your prayers to Allah's threshold were not accepted. Furthermore, this house has been damaged by the recent earthquake, and it's not really safe for you and your family. If you are agreeable, allow me to purchase or lease a house that is rightfully yours, and your prayers will be accepted there, and allow me to repair this house. After the repair, if you still wish to, you can reoccupy this house. The man welcomes the opportunity to own a house that is rightfully his. Mirza leases a house for the amount of 102 months. The man leaves the house in the Bab willingly. The lady, Nabi, owns a house that is rightfully his, and Mirza proceeds to make some repairs and rents the house to a number of trusted Baha'is. Among these residents was one Haji Abu Hassan, who was a devout believer and had accompanied the Bab and Mubarak on the pilgrimage to Mecca. Over this period, a number of trusted Baha'is lived in the house. In the same period, Shiraz was shook by a number of earthquakes, damaging many homes and structures, including some damage to the house of His Holiness the Bab. So by this time, the house is under the control of Mirza. It is on and off occupied by the friend, and has suffered some minor damage due to a number of earthquakes. Nabila Azam, a devoted believer and author of the history of the formative years of the faith, that later was consolidated by the Guardian and published as the Dawnbreaker, was sent by Baha'u'llah in the fall of 1866 to Shiraz. He was the first Baha'i to visit the house, and in accordance with the specific rites prescribed this Hajj, performed pilgrimage to the house of the Bab.
In 1871, Munira Khanum, on her way from Isfahan to the Holy Land to marry Abdullah, stopped in Shiraz for a period of 15 days. The residence was the house of the martyred uncle. During this period, she and Khadija Begum were each other's companions and quickly developed a deep bond and friendship. In one of her discussions, she requested that Munira Khanum, after being granted an audience of the Holy, kindly ask for his permission that the house be repaired so she can return and reside in Britain. Munira Khanum, upon her arrival at the Holy Land during one of her audiences with Baha'u'llah, shares Khadija Begum's request. Baha'u'llah, out of his love for the Bab and reverence for Khadija Begum, accepts her request. He immediately revealed the tablet to Shiraz in honor of Mirza and Khadija Begum, that the house be repaired in accordance with the wishes of Khadija Begum. The first major rebuild of the house of the Bab was performed by Hamid, as ordained by the Blessed Beauty and in accordance with the wishes and the course of Khadija Begum. Why this is important will be observed later. Khadija Begum tells her nephew, that if the house is rebuilt to its original design, it will trigger
too many painful memories of the days in the house with his old Mr. Ball, and request of Allah to make certain changes. Hence, he removes two of the rooms and adds that space to the yard, and relocates the central pool to another part of the yard. After these repairs, Hamid moved into the house and was as there for a period of 9 years until her passing. In 1879, Allah, for safety reasons, leaves Shiraz. Hamid passes away on September 15, 1882. After her ascension, from instructions of Baha'u'llah, her sister Zahra Begum moves into the house and resides until her passing in 1890. On September 15, 1980, Mirza instructs his son, Mirza Jalal, to take care of the house, and his wife and other children to travel to Egypt and join him, visit the Holy Land, and then live in Forsyth. Between 1890 and 1901, during this period, Mirza's other son, Mirza Jalal, stayed in Shiraz and oversees the affairs of the house. From a number of Abdul Bahá's tablets, it's apparent believers did visit the house of the Bahá'í, and there was continued difficulties with enemies of the faith during this period. In 1901, Abdul Bahá invites Mirza and family from Port Said to the Holy Land, and after blessing much honor and praise upon him, sends him back to Iran. He states, "I am sending you to Shiraz on an important mission. I am hopeful that you may be able to fulfill this duty and accomplish the assignment with success, but that does not share what the assignment is." After Hamid's family arrived in Shiraz, they await anxiously for a period of 2 years or so, until Abdul Bahá starts revealing one tablet after another, instructing Mirza that without any delay, proceed to rebuild the house, in accordance with its original design, layout, and architecture. Here are some excerpts from a few of the master's tablets. "You must reconstruct the house of His Excellency the Bahá without the slightest delay, in accordance with its initial design, with the utmost of order, finesse, cleanliness, and devotion." In the second tablet, the master states, "A moment of apathy is not allowed. Any delay will cause immense challenges." In another tablet, the master states, "Though in these days the skies are in tumult, and the foundation of the world are being shaken, the gates of hardship and disaster are open, the stores of tests and tribulations present. During such tumultuous period, the rebuild of the honored house is a task of immense importance." Upon receipt and reading of the tablets from the master, Mirza invites the dignitaries and statesmen of the community to the house of God for attaining the blessing of visitation and reading the recent revealed and received tablets from the master. Among the attendees were dignitaries of the Bahá'í community and one Mimar Bashi, a title reserved for architect and master builders. After reading the tablets, each of the friends, per their own understanding, offered opinions and mostly stated that undertaking the task in such a period is very difficult and challenging. Mirza listens to all the comments and then states, "The master of the faith had ordered that without any delay, the holy house be rebuilt immediately. There must be wisdom in his commandment that may not be apparent to us. I have not invited you here to consult on this matter, as we have been ordered by the cause. In this matter, no delay or debate is permissible. None have the strength to disobey his command. I have invited you to share these tablets with you and inform you that I am about to start construction." All provided their confirmation and support. Mimar Bashi, who was the master builder of renowned talent and a devoted servant of the Blessed Beauty, would start the construction. On Saturday, the 8th of August, 1903, Mimar Bashi and his team, under the supervision and tutelage of Mahdavy, start construction. The entire structure was razed to the ground. They dug down to the earth until the old foundation of the house was unearthed, and they started rebuilding. In a very small space, about 30 bricklayers, stonemasons, and others, under the supervision of Mirza, worked on reconstruction of the house. It is here that Amirzal's knowledge of the house gained through previous minor and major repairs enabled him to rebuild the house to its original layout and design per Abdul Bahá's wishes. Amirzal falls ill on October 22nd, 1903. His condition worsens day by day. By this time, the main structure of the house is nearing completion. Amirzal was able to continue supervision for another 2 weeks and passes on November 21st, 1903. The house, as Abdul Bahá had desired, is rebuilt, and all but the painting and decorative plasterwork remains, which is later finished under the supervision of his son, Mirza Habibullah. It is here that we understand the wisdom and the master's insistence that no apathy in delay is permissible. Without Amirzal, no one could have had the knowledge to restore the house of the Bab to its original design. From the passing of Amirzal in 1903 until the beginning of the rule of Reza Shah Pahlavi in 1925, many times the clerics instigated tumult and agitated the masses to harass and attack the house. Mr. Habibullah Afnan, Mr. Muhammad Al-Khan, who was the chair of the Elham of Shiraz, with wisdom, excellent relationships with merchants and governors, managed to quell them before the house was physically assaulted. Of Reza Shah Pahlavi's rule, he operated with such an iron fist that the country was in relative calm, and clergy had little or no standing. Upon the occupation of Iran by the Allied forces and the exile of Reza Shah in 1941, the central government lost its grip on the country, and the young Shah believed having a better relationship with the clergy would help his fledgling government. This had the intended, or maybe unintended consequence that the Baha'is at the time became cannon fodder in the various power struggles in Iran. In this period, there were several attempts to set fire to the House of the Bab in 1943, 1945, and 1946. Through the efforts of Habibullah Afnan and the assistance of the local police chief, a personal friend, these events were successfully averted. A more serious threat emerged during the Falsafi campaign in 1955. During Ramadan, Muhammad Taqi Falsafi, a prominent cleric, used national radio broadcasts to spread anti-Bahá'í propaganda and incite public hostility. This campaign led to the destruction of the dome of the Bahá'í Center in Tehran and caused damage to the house of the Bab in Shiraz as well. However, in Shiraz, the intervention of General Hamid, the governor and a friend of the faith, prevented further destruction. Beginning in the summer of 1978, the streets of Elham and Shiraz were literally on fire. There were almost daily demonstrations against the regime and called for Ayatollah Khomeini's return. In Shiraz, there are a number of events, including the burning of the White houses inside the inn. And every time there was trouble, the house also would be attacked. The house was assaulted a number of times until its final destruction. The following is the translation of an eyewitness account by a resident of the Shimshit Alley during this period. In the 175-year history of this blessed faith, the story of the Alley of Shimshit or in other words, the Alley of the Blessed House of Shiraz, is a story of tears and laughter, and the pivot and heart of this story is a house that is the point of circumambulation of the two worlds. It is the house of this most glorious, the primal point, the dawning point of the sun of reality, and the start of the history of all the sacrifices and martyrdoms of the believers of the faith. The heroes in these stories are the tried and true, tested and oppressed residents of this alley, that in the vicinity of the blessed house, always, with unity, agreement, selflessness, and sacrifice, have written a page in the everlasting history of this blessed faith, and themselves have been recipients and beneficiaries of the transformative power and spiritual atmosphere of this blessed place. The material you will hear about is derived from the accounts of the friends who were witness to these events. Throughout the history of the faith, the House of Shiraz, on a number of occasions, had been the target of the onslaught of enemies of the cause, including during the government of the Mahdavy regime in 1955. Due to the instigations of one of the clerics, Mahdavy religious zealots attacked the house and damaged portions. With the start of the Islamic Revolution, exactly 1.5 months after the victory of the revolution, on the 29th of March 1979, the first attack occurred. A large mass of people who had been stirred up and prompted at the local mosque attacked the house and damaged portions of the building. After about 2 weeks from this event, we got news that the night before, one of the influential clerics in town had instigated the masses that the house of Sayyid Abal must be destroyed. The following morning, a young 15-year-old brought news that the attackers were on their way, and within a half an hour, the pickaxe and shovels had gathered in the adjacent Beit al-Mahdi, meaning home of the promised one, the mosque, which was under construction, and were waiting. A few moments later, a large mass of people, with the leadership of 2 of the local clergy, while chanting Allahu Akbar, entered the house and approached the house. They tried to break the door with a pickaxe, but were not able to do so. However, they climbed onto the rooftop of an adjacent building and entered the house, broke the lock, opened the door, and let the masses in. The crowd started breaking doors and windows, but removed the large window to the room of revelation, hole, and set it aside. About 2 p.m., the roof of the room collapsed. After these assaults, multiple letters from local LSA and NSA were sent to various political and religious leaders, asking for the attacks to stop and protection be given to the house. These letters fell on deaf ears and had no effect whatsoever. In parallel, instructions were given to the believers to start rebuild and protection of the house. While these efforts were ongoing, this time, the governor, city mayor, and IRGC sent armed men who took station on the rooftop and threatened to shoot anyone who attempted to enter or repair the house. After a few months of delay, on 16 November 1979, 2 municipal workers were assigned to disrupt the house. And over the next 2 months, the house was half destroyed. The Bahá'ís took care and catered to these individuals who had become greatly embarrassed and ashamed of what they had been assigned to do, but stated they did not disobey their orders. On the 20th of November 1980, which corresponds to the 10th of Muharram, 3 people carrying a 4-liter container of flammable material entered the house and proceeded to set the room of the mother of Bob on fire, and left after 1.5 hours. One of the believers that had noticed the smoke notified a number of youth and others, and they brought water and quenched the fire. In April-May timeframe of 1981, the destruction of houses at the beginning of the alley started. Initially, they disconnected the power and water to all the homes on the right side of the alley. However, the friends whose homes were on the left side of the alley provided necessary electricity and water to the others. The agreement was, to the extent possible, we all stay in our home. This condition existed for about 6 months. At the same time, the workers were busy destroying the house of the mosque. On one of the days around noontime, Ayatollah Dasbeh, the Imam Jomah, leader of the Friday prayers at the mosque, came and climbed upon the rubble of the mosque house and demanded that the house of the ball and all the believers in the area be destroyed as soon as possible, because he wanted to drive on a road that was going to be built in his name and personally drive his car over the property where the house of the ball once stood. About 1 month after the total destruction of the house and those of the adjacent Bahá'ís, he was killed in an explosion and did not live to fulfill the wish. As the destruction of the homes moved forward, those displaced moved to other locations, and those of us who remained would get together every evening, read poetry, say prayers, share jokes, and reflect on our collective life memories. In other words, enjoy and cherish the fleeting moments we had together, as we all knew what awaited us. Of interest is that those assigned to destroy the house could not understand why every day the Bahá'ís would give them tea, sweets, pastries, and ice water. On 11th of November 1981, around 1 a.m. in the morning,
the bulldozer, after destroying all the other houses in the alley, came to the remnants of the house of the ball. The operator decided to stop work and resume in the next morning. However, a frantic Haji approached the operator and said, "I will not be able to sleep until I see this house destroyed tonight," and gave him some money, and he proceeded to knock down one of the remaining walls of the house, and the man left. And after his departure, they postponed the rest of the work till the morning. On the following day, a large crowd had gathered with bags looking for riches and treasures they believed were hidden and buried in the house, and even got to the point that they would demand the loader operator to take his bucket and dump it in an area where they could sift through it to make sure there was nothing of value in it. One of the residents recalled the interesting story that as the heavy machinery approached the main pool in the middle of the yard, it suddenly sunk a few feet. All the people, excited they had found hidden treasure, stormed the area, only to find out the septic well had collapsed. After this event, I left and went to my home and found two rather large men exiting from the basement of my home. I asked them what they were doing. They started begging me to show them the passage from which they could go to Israel. I told them that such a passage did not exist. They were very disappointed. Also, November 1981, there was nothing left of that blessed house, and this left only an ocean of sorrow for the friends. Of the residents of the alley, all had left, but the last 4 households that lived at the very end of the alley. They remained. Those homes too were destroyed a week later. On 19th of November 1981, there was no sign of the Shibshidaro alley, and the history of the alley and the blessed house came to an end.
As you can see, this was a very emotional video for us to put together. So Hamid's going to bring it to the finish.
Baha'u'llah promised and affirmed by Abdul. In the future, Iran will be ruled by a just government. The Islamic Republic actually has done a lot of work for us. We take you guys to London, this is Shiraz. Okay. This here is Beit al-Mahdi, which was the mosque you saw right next to the house of the Ball. Here is what is known as Shah Cheral. And across here is the Vakil Mosque, where the Ball is called, just for point of reference. This was all covered by houses, and our friends in the Islamic Republic destroyed all of them and opened up the space. Don't look at that picture. But by the pictures, it appears that the house of the Ball was actually right here, somewhere adjacent, but as you can see, the area is difficult. When that just government comes, a lot of these other buildings will be gone too. And the house of Ball will be rebuilt. The faith has all the dimensions, all the pictures, all the information. And
Okay, but we'd like to really thank you for your patience. We know that it was a very long